In today's video, meet the real-life Papa Smurf and a man that has turned his deformity into celebrity status. Turtle Boy. Didier Montalvo had one unique trait that made him famous, but also caused him a lot of suffering. When he was born, he had a small mole on his back, but by the time he reached 6, the mole grew so big it looked like a turtle shell was attached to the boy's back. From then on, Didier was dubbed the Turtle Boy. The rare birthmark, called congenital melanotic nevus, affects around 1 in 20,000 newborn babies. However, a top surgeon described Didier's condition as the worst he'd ever seen. Didier's life was severely affected by the growth covering more than half of his body's circumference, both in the painful itchiness of his skin and how it affected his confidence. He and his family were shunned by villagers in his home in rural Colombia in South America, and his mother Luz was even told it was her fault for looking at a solar eclipse while pregnant. While the family was too poor to do anything about the boy's condition, an outpouring of help came when a local newspaper featured him. Money was no longer the problem, but the surgery to remove the giant mole proved to be painful and dangerous. Fortunately, the surgery was successful, and the former Turtle Boy is now living a rather normal life. Papa Smurf. Paul Carasan is a person that's very easy to pick out in a crowd because of his unique look. His skin is blue. In 2008, Paul Carasan appeared on national television to reveal his unordinary skin to the world. Prior to his TV debut, Paul had been living as a recluse. He simply tried to limit his time in public as much as possible. Paul grew up with red hair and fair skin. During his middle-aged years, he came down with a serious case of dermatitis and flaky skin on his face. Then one day he saw an ad for an old wives' remedy and decided to give it a try. The ad was for a concoction called colloidal silver, a once popular cold and flu remedy used in the early 20th century up until the 50s. The solution, made up of tiny silver particles, promised to be a cure-all. Paul started drinking 10 ounces of his own homebrewed serum every day, and he did so for over a decade. Good news is his dermatitis cleared up. The thing is, his skin became permanently blue for the rest of his life. The Man of the Woods. Beauty and the Beast is a beloved childhood fairy tale to many of us. But did you know that its story was partially inspired by a real person? Hard to believe, but it's true. In 1537, a man named Petrus Gonzalez was born, and although his birthplace changes from story to story, most believe that he was born in the Canary Islands. People immediately found him strange as he was covered in hair from head to toe. Today, we know the condition to be called hypertrichosis, but back then, even his own mother thought he was possessed by a demonic disease. So, after a decade of being shunned, his mother sold him off to a group of pirates who gave him the nickname the Man of the Woods. He was then gifted to Henry II, then King of France. The king took particular interest in the hairy boy, especially when he noticed that Petrus was learning French remarkably fast. He took Petrus's education further, giving him a gentleman's education. Under the French king's wing, Petrus learned everything from Latin to even military tactics. Petrus stayed 40 years in the king's court and was even able to find love and live a happily married life. At least, up until a point, of course. Truth be told, Petrus' story is too long and a bit too tragic to fit all in this video, but let us know in the comments if you want to hear the full story of this amazing man. Real-life samurai. People say never bring a knife to a gunfight, but I bet you when you hear about our next entry on the list, you won't have the guts to face him and his sword in a fight, even if you're packing a couple of hand cannons. Isao Machi has dedicated his life to mastering the use of his sword. He currently holds multiple world records pertaining to swordsmanship, mostly involving how fast he can cut something or how many things he can cut within a specified amount of time. He possesses above average speed, but that's not the reason why he's on this list. Machi has superhuman reflexes, allowing him to react to external stimuli much quicker than any normal person. To test this, a TV show once filmed him doing something so remarkable that you had to see it to believe it. He sliced a BB gun pellet in half while in flight, which was shot from 70 feet away. The scientist present during the stunt was dumbfounded, and the only explanation she can give is that his reflexes and anticipations were of no human beings, allowing him to cleanly cut something that he couldn't even see. The girl that feels no pain. Growing up, Gabby Gingras was your typical girl. Goes to school, has friends, loves playing board games, and was your typical normal kid. Aside from one thing. This girl feels no pain. And I mean that literally. Back when she was in school, she wore a helmet and goggles and was constantly accompanied by a teacher's aide. Needless to say, by not having the ability to feel pain, she was at constant risk of seriously injuring herself. What Gabby's suffering from is a condition called hereditary sensory autonomic neuropathy, an extremely rare genetic disorder that affects the sensory nerves. In Gabby, the nerve fibers that detect pain and temperature never developed. Unfortunately, there's no cure. So, Gabby basically grew up guarded, with her parents trying to ensure that she doesn't get seriously hurt. But even so, she got into accidents that resulted in her losing all of her teeth, one at a time. A painful ordeal for anybody, but Gabby never felt a single part of it. Just recently, a GoFundMe campaign was set up to fund new teeth for the poor girl as her medical insurance declined to shoulder the cost of dental implants. However, it looks like those donations will not be needed as Delta Dental agreed to donate $100,000 in order to get Gabby new pearly whites. An awesome present for her high school graduation, to say the least. Parasitic twin. You ask me, twins are awesome, if everything goes well at least. In some cases, having twins can be a nightmare. And no, I'm not talking about the mess they leave behind as kids. Manar Majed was an Egyptian girl who was born with her twin Islam attached to her head, a condition known as craniopagus parasiticus, or parasitic twin. Islam was basically nothing but a head and upper torso, but was able to smile and blink on her own. Still, doctors determined that she had to be removed in order to give Manar a chance at a normal life. In February of 2005, when she was 10 months old, Manar underwent an operation to remove the parasitic head in a hospital in Banha, 25 miles north of Cairo in Egypt. The operation was successful, at least for the time being. Manar then became the first baby to survive the surgical removal of a parasitic head. However, due to persistent infection in her brain, she only lived for an additional 13 months and died on March 25, 2006, only a few days short of her second birthday. The real Stretch Armstrong. He may not be able to stretch any of his extremities, but Gary Turner didn't earn his nickname of the Elastic Man for nothing. You see, Gary has extremely stretchy skin. So stretchy, in fact, that he set the Guinness World Record for the stretchiest skin in the world back in 1999. And he still holds the record to this day. Gary Turner knew about his stretchy skin from an early age. At the age of 13, doctors figured out that his stretchy skin was due to a very rare and extreme case of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. This is a genetic disorder of connecting tissues that affect ligaments, skin, and internal organs. In this condition, the collagen, which strengthens and determines the elasticity of the skin, becomes defective, which leads to the loosening of skin and other problems. Despite all that, he still managed to find work. He's a sideshow performer, and his acts include pulling on his tummy skin, pulling his chest skin over his face, and many more feats showing off his elasticity. Now it's time for the day's best pick. Fact is, this person isn't only big, he's also a vampire, a fictional character from the movie Blade named Pearl. The heaviest person ever. John Brower Minash holds the distinction for being the heaviest human to have ever lived. Ever. Mr. Minash was born on September 29, 1941 in Bainbridge Island, Washington. His health fluctuated a lot over his life. When he was 12 years old, he weighed close to 300 pounds. In his early 20s, he was over 6 feet tall and close to 400 pounds. By the time he was 25 years old, he was around 700. By 35, he weighed over 975 and was on his way to setting a world record. By the time 1978 rolled around, he was about 36 years old and experiencing some serious health complications. He was admitted to the University Hospital in Seattle for cardiac and respiratory failure. Took over a dozen firemen and a very large and specific stretcher to get him to the hospital. Once he arrived, he needed 13 nurses and a double-wide hospital bed just to be able to lie down. The doctors who were working on him estimated that he was 1,400 pounds. He did manage to lose a lot of that weight though, around 925 pounds of it. This was due to him being put on a strict 1,200 calorie diet for 20 months. This feat also landed him another world record, being the man to have lost the most weight. The Sleepless Man. Everybody needs sleep. In fact, people have actually died from lack of sleep. Not Tai Nagok though, a man to whom sleep seems like it's optional. This Vietnamese man hasn't had a good night's sleep in almost 50 years. That is, if reports are to be believed. His sleepless ordeal began one night in 1973 when at the age of 31 he had a sudden bout of high fever. His fever was so high he fell into unconsciousness, and when he came to, he never slept again. At least according to Nagok. The first few days of no sleep was very uncomfortable for him. He tried drinking, a tried and tested method to get to sleep, but it didn't work. Nagok manages to carry on with his daily activities without any symptoms of sleep deprivation. He works hard on his farm and takes care of his pigs, mostly at night. And even after many trips to the hospital, doctors are still baffled as to why this person doesn't seem to need to sleep. Celebrity Octopus. Rudy Santos was known as Octoman in his home country of the Philippines. He was born with a parasitic twin, resulting in Rudy having 2 extra arms, an extra deformed right leg, additional shoulders, nipples, and an undeveloped head attached to his sternum. Unlike other people with such a condition, he didn't shy away from society and turned his deformity into a money-making endeavor. He was the main attraction at traveling fairs and was aptly named Octoman. This name was done to attract more audiences. Rudy was a national celebrity in his home country of the Philippines back then, earning at least $300 every single night. Now that he's retired, doctors have offered to remove Rudy's twin for him, but Rudy declined, saying that he's grown too attached to his twin, both literally and figuratively. He's now quite old and bedridden, his twin still clinging to him. See you all next time!